Ever since I posted a video yesterday where I named my Chiappa Rhino as my favorite concealed carry of all time, I've been getting a lot of questions about the trigger pull on this gun. In that video I said when the gun first came out about 6 years ago, I was very enamored by the looks of the gun, but when I went to fire it, I just couldn't bring myself to buy it because the trigger was so atrocious. In double action, the trigger was so heavy that I literally felt like I needed 2 hands to pull it. And the cocking mechanism was so difficult to use that I could not cock it with a strong hand. The internal mechanism was so stiff that I had to use my weak hand to cock the gun to even fire it in single action. And the trigger wasn't the smoothest thing in the world either. It was quite a bit gritty. So even though I loved the looks of this gun, I couldn't buy it because the trigger made it useless as a defensive weapon. And first and foremost, this is a defensive weapon. It isn't a dining room table centerpiece. It isn't a frilly hat. It isn't a pretty tie. It is a weapon, and it has to function as a weapon to be worth it no matter what it looks like. So I basically just walked away saying, it's a nice concept in theory, but in practical application, it just didn't work. So I didn't think about the gun for probably another 5 years. But then I thought, maybe they've worked the bugs out of it now because I'm hearing good things. So I thought, well, I'll try it. And now it's so much better. The trigger is nice and smooth and consistent, and the double action pull is not heavy at all. It feels really good. And I can easily cock the hammer with my strong hand. And the single action trigger is amazing. But like I said, some people have been asking me, what is the exact weight of pull for the double action and the single action trigger? Bob Wampler was one of the people that asked me specifically what the weights were. And I don't know if that's your real name or not. I hope not. If it is, I'm sorry. Not because I gave your name out, but because your name is Bob Wampler. It doesn't sound so much like a name as it does like a derogatory slang term for promiscuous homosexuals in Scotland or something. That guy's a real Bob Wampler, if you know what I mean. But that aside, tonight I thought I would take a moment to show the trigger weights of this gun. And I'll compare them to 2 other guns. First, we'll see how it stacks up against another revolver, specifically a Smith & Wesson 629 Performance Center. And then I'll compare it to the trigger on my new SIG Sauer P229 Legion. Everyone's raving about the trigger on the Legion, so let's see how the Chiappa stacks up to it. Now, on each gun, I'll take 3 readings and then do the average of all 3 readings. First, we'll do the double action trigger. Okay, the average weight on the double action trigger of the Smith Performance Center is right at 11 pounds. Now let's measure the double action trigger on the SIG Sauer. I've done this once already this week. Let's see if it holds true to my first readings. The average double action reading on the SIG Sauer P229 Legion was 10 pounds, 7 ounces. And finally, let's measure the double action trigger on the Chiappa Rhino. The average double action trigger pull on the Chiappa Rhino was 9 pounds, 1.5 ounces. But I do have to say, I've shot this gun a lot, so this trigger is well worn in. The others, not so much. Now let's do the single action weight of the Smith & Wesson. The average trigger pull weight on the single action for the Smith & Wesson Performance Center is 4 pounds, 3.7 ounces. Now let's do the single action trigger on the SIG Sauer Legion. The average single action trigger weight for the SIG Sauer P229 Legion was 4 pounds, 13 ounces. And now finally, let's measure the single action trigger on the Chiappa Rhino. The average single action trigger pull in the Chiappa Rhino was exactly 3 pounds. That's a very light single action trigger. So there you have it. That should answer the question of what is the actual trigger pull weight on the Chiappa Rhino for all those that were interested. I'm not going to go into reading a lot into the numbers and telling you which one's better, etc. I'll just let the numbers speak for themselves. But I'm going to say I love the trigger on the Chiappa Rhino. I love the gun itself because I like a revolver, I like 357 Magnum, and as you can see from those measurements, this trigger is pretty daggone good.